The Girlboss has killed Hollywood, and while they seem to be catching on, they hate to admit it. Not only does it cause their films to fail, but the entire industry is contracting at the moment to the point where actors are struggling to find jobs. That strike went on for months just to get a small % increase, but massively increased the cost of every production. Yeah, that went well, didn't it? That was a smart decision there.
We are union through and through, all the way to the end.
Maybe that's why we didn't go on a strike again. But it's got so bad now that actors are not only talking about the decline of film, but the decline of film as a primary form of entertainment. It feels much more niche now. Interestingly, when she expanded on it, she didn't just say it declined. She said, if you ask someone my kid's age about movie stars, they don't know anyone compared to YouTube stars. Or whatever. We're living in a time where more people know TikTokers than some Hollywood actors.
I loved it.
Was this any surprise when the TikTokers got there because of their talent? Because people actually wanted to watch them, rather than Hollywood, where they pick people and go, you will like this person. We will put them in anything, no matter how horrifying or annoying you find the person.
I cannot even believe those words just came out of your face towards my face.
They try to choose people to be a success, rather than that person developing naturally.
At the end of the day, this is the story of representation, and it matters.
And that's the same thing that happened with the Girlboss. The Girlboss and Hollywood ideas didn't evolve naturally. They weren't successful, and so they kept doubling down. It was more like they failed and kept doubling down. They thought they could shame the audience into liking them.
Some of the fan base have decided to attack Moses Ingram online. Just sickened me to my stomach. You're no Star Wars fan in my mind.
As we've seen when multiple actors were weaponized against the audience. With that, is it any surprise that Hollywood has shrunk? Or that they start to care more about YouTube? Who wants to spend their time and money watching somebody who you know hates you? There's a lot of talk about separating the art from the artist, but I don't know why I should separate Mark Ruffalo from his acting roles when I know what he says on Twitter.
Way to set feminism back a few decades.
But this collapse is, of course, causing cope among the actors, because when you're not successful anymore, there's a liberation to it in not having your art be popular. You can explore what's really interesting to you. I have a feeling that's what Hollywood has been doing. They weren't making stuff that was popular, they were making stuff that they wanted, that they were interested in. It becomes more about passion than commerce. If it was about commerce, don't you think it would have been successful? Once these art forms become less popular, you have to ask, well, okay, who are we making this for? If you knew who they were making it for, they would be popular. She's almost backing up, without realizing it, what I've said before, that this only happened because they were so successful. There was so much money, they thought they couldn't fail. They thought they could dictate not only who was in the cinema, or the messages that were in the movie, but who their audience was. Yeah, sure, we had all those pesky menfolk in the audience, but we don't want them. We'd rather just switch and have women in the cinema now for some reason.
Here's to questionable choices.
And that doesn't work. It doubly doesn't work with the Girlboss. And so as Disney and their streaming service is failing, it seems like some people are beginning to catch on to the problem, as much as they despise realizing what the problem is. That's how you get an apparent Disney exec blaming all of their problems on, well, those bigoted fans. From a newsletter, a Disney executive supposedly said, oh, people keep talking about how they just want good movies, and that movies are a great way to jump into political issues. Notice how on the second line they're already thinking of movies not as entertainment, not as a way for customers to enjoy themselves and kill time, but as a platform to change things. It does make you wonder why you change entertainment from being entertaining to convincing. You decide it's also important to change your audience from male to female.
This carpet is a person with feelings.
But more and more, our audience, or the segment of the audience that has been politicized, which remember is what Disney wanted, as Bob Iger has said that they shouldn't remain neutral in this stuff, that company should take a stand. But this part of the audience equate the perceived messaging in a film as a quality issue, because it is. A hero is a hero, not because he's doing actions, but because he's doing actions that you deem to be heroic. If somebody else has different values, they will think that the hero is somebody who does different actions.
It's the principle of the thing.
And so, as you need to agree with a hero in order for him to be heroic, and you to get that emotional resonance with the story in the first place, if Disney put messages in their movie that you don't agree with, then it will make you feel differently about the movie than intended. And if every piece of entertainment is having the villain as the person you perceive to be a heroic, as opposed to the supposed good guys, then it has a repulsive effect on the audience, and that destroys your IP, destroys the characters, and makes you go bankrupt.
Police, get what you deserve!
That's why messaging is a quality issue. Also, they know this. That's why they feel it's so important to put their values in a movie. That's why they think representation should be in a movie, because they value it and they think it increases the quality, which it does for them. They'll only tell you that the messaging isn't important when you want a different messaging in it than they do.
What I care about is the reality of goodness, not the perception of it.
But he continues, they won't say they find female empowerment distasteful in the Marvels or Star Wars, won't they? Look, I have said repeatedly.
I'm not about to let a man take credit for a woman's work.
But they will say that they don't like those movies because they are bad. So, make better movies becomes code for make movies that conform to regressive gender stereotypes, or put men front and center in the narrative.
Based economy.
Yes, the audience is asking for you to make movies that conform to regressive ideas, like people should act how they do in real life. Oh, the horror! There's a reason why Korean and Japanese television is kicking your ass. It's because the people act like people. It actually makes you immersed in the television because it feels like an actual real life thing. Creates a believable world because I don't have to believe that somebody who's 4'10", somebody who couldn't even beat me up, could somehow take on a massive 6'4" bodyguard. But it's interesting that he's calling it regressive. What you're seeing now and what Bob Iger's pivot is all about. Because there are some in Disney which are realizing, actually all of this is true and it needs to be. Yes, the audience, those bigots, they would like people to act like human beings, rather than a deranged Californian wet dream. They've been sniffing the exhaust a little bit too hard recently, and for some reason forgot how the world works. So as YouTube actually marks the top of the US streaming pile, they're beginning to realize that women can't carry the box office. 70% of the superhero audience in North America are blokes. And even when you spend 70 or 80% of your marketing budget on largely female platforms such as TikTok, the best you can do to get them into the cinema is to get the percent up to 46. So still, more men are going, but you also scare off the majority of your audience who have no interest in watching a chick flick. Because while you may be targeting it at a demographic, they don't like the messaging of the movie. The Girlboss is a horrible idea, because the Disney execs' ideas works for everything. People perceive the messaging as a film as a quality issue. Yes, it also works when you like a movie. The messaging in Barbie is what the target demographic wanted. Look, we know you're all miserable in your home with wine, cats, and antidepressants, but it's not your fault. It's just so hard being you. What you should really do is blame somebody else for it.
It is literally impossible to be a woman.
And nobody gives you a medal or says thank you.
You don't need to make yourself better. There's nothing you could have done about it. It's just somebody over there was keeping you down. That is an entirely different message to the Girlboss. Somebody who's loud, independent, and powerful. Somebody who's in complete control of her own life. And when you're in control, you're responsible and accountable, because if you don't like your life, you could have changed it, and you chose not to. That's a very different message than Barbie, and Barbie was a success, while Madam Web and the Marvels were massive flops. The Disney exec can whine all he wants about the perceived messaging in a film being a quality issue, but it's true. And you can't change reality. But the idea that they can, that if they just repeat it enough, they can convince you that the falsehood is true. That's why movies have been failing. Unfortunately, as bankruptcy happens, it's only so long you can believe that. Especially as AI is an ever-lingering threat. If the actors don't improve, then they might just get replaced. If a computer can write better stories than you, stories which align more with what the audience wants, than you can, then they'll just use the AI. This is why one director thinks that we're actually just 3 to 5 years away from making an entire show just from it. Which, given what we've seen from Sora and video generation, could well be the case. So Marvel need to step up, and they've decided to quietly retool amid the superhero fatigue, which is the catch-all term for, we've really messed this up. The audience are definitely tired of what you're giving them, and blaming it on superheroes is a lot easier than blaming it on yourselves.
Hey Bob, go yourself. Is that clear?
The studio's golden box office aura has been dented, but Kevin Feige isn't scrapping his years-long cinematic universe plan because he's an idiot. They're not giving up, says an insider, although they are moving away from things such as Kang, which supposedly they've been doing since Ant-Man Quantumania failed, but honestly, that's not even Kang's fault. That was just a terrible movie. I mean, do you remember what they said about the ants?
I know socialism is a charged word, but we could learn a lot from these.
Also a side effect of people catching on to the failure failure is that women-led films fell close to 30% in 2023, near a 10-year low. This is a catastrophic step backwards. So it's nice to know that we've made progress, although there's still work to do. Even by looking at films that were moved to 2024 because of the strike, we cannot explain the collapse of leads and co-leads in 2023, other to say that this is an industry failure. And it doesn't take a genius to work out that this industry failure might be being caused by the fact that they're industry failures, because what you are serving up is not what the audience wanted. I mean, we know what the audience wanted. But because you refuse to put that into the movies, the only thing left is the Girlboss that repulses everybody, as the messaging doesn't align with the audience. I mean, what examples do you have of this being a success? The most recent that I can think of is the Girls on the Bus trailer.
For political reporters, the state of American politics is the state of our own lives.
This is where they're definitely in prominent lead positions, and as the trailer showed, we got this.
Your network is racist and sexist and conservative.
Is this your idea of quality entertainment?
These schmucks are dangerous.
Our democracy is dead!
Does this make you want to rush out and go and subscribe to a platform?
Wake up! It's only our democracy at stake.
Check in the moment it goes live on streaming.
You're a polar bear.
I'm a what?
Go out to your friends and tell them how amazing it is.
Wait, what? You have been getting laid this entire time and you're still this tense?
No, because the Girlboss doesn't resonate. And the messaging doesn't reflect the audience's values. I mean, Disney is so out of touch with what the audience wants. They completed reshoots for Agatha the Darkhold Diaries, generally taking 5 days. This time did it in 1, which is giving the studio a sunny outlook around the show internally. Remembering that Agatha is a spin-off of WandaVision, which was a spin-off of the Avengers, and people have seen WandaVision, we know the kind of thing we're going to get. It's very surprising that you would have a sunny outlook for the show. Who is this meant to appeal to? Who watched WandaVision and thought, yeah, Agatha's amazing. I really want to spend 8 hours just looking at her. The studio also quietly hired Eric Pearson to polish the script for the Fantastic Four. Pearson is the company stalwart who worked on Thor Ragnarok and Black Widow. He has a reputation for taking projects over the finish line. Yes, but look how they ended up. Who looks at Black Widow and goes, I want the guy that finished that? It's not a question of did he get it made, it's should he have made it?
Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to have sex with my brother.
Cut. Thank you.
And this is a movie where the stakes are very high because they're desperately in search of characters who can carry the universe forwards. And if that movie flops, and personally, my hopes aren't that high for it, you did cast Pedro Pascal in it, so it's always going to take a hit in the confidence there. But if it's not a success, they're going to have to find those characters somewhere else. And I don't know where they're going to come from. Agatha? Could Agatha save the MCU? Does the MCU need even more girl bosses? Because I tell you what, if you had more, yeah, you're going to have even more of a struggle to get jobs.
And they're going to boycott Disney?
They already are.
Their other plan is to reorganize operations to allow for greater control from showrunners. Yeah. Now, it is worth mentioning that Bob Iger, when the Marvels flopped, did have an excuse. He claimed the failure of the Marvels on the fact that due to the year it was filmed in, there wasn't as much supervision on the set, and they needed executives to be looking over what's being done day to day. So we're really talking out of both sides of our mouth here, are we? On the one hand, the studios need to get more involved. They need to be staring over people's shoulders all the time, because those pesky creators just can't be trusted. And on the other, we really need to give them more creative freedom and just let them do whatever they want.
Make it make sense.
I do like where it says this was a move made after Secret Invasion, where they sidelined an executive producer a year in. It's like, I don't care who had freedom on that show. There was no saving that mess. The script alone would have killed it. The very ideas for the movie killed it. But Marvel has a very internal focus this year. Execs are not calling it a reboot, not even a soft one. Nobody likes a soft one. But the biggest question is, what do you think this retooling is going to do when you're not changing any of the problems? Some of our studios lost a little focus, so we've reduced output. This means that the films you're making can be better. Just because you reduce the amount you create doesn't mean that the stuff you create gets better. This would only be true if you had a core of good programs and then a load of bad ones and you just cut the bad ones. But Disney's problem is the people. and the way they hire the people. When none of your people were hired for talent, they were hired because they filled this chart. How are you going to fix the problem with the same people and value system that created the problem? Also, the interesting thing about this chart is the Hollywood Reporter got really mad at him that he said a secret source when they published it in 2020, essentially taking the piss that he didn't know this before, not that it's a prejudiced, discriminatory set of hiring practices which aims to get around the legal system. So what's the joke, Hollywood Reporter, that you published this and thought it was a good thing?
Thank you. I love movies. I love making them. And I am a fan of movies.
I mean, anyone that talks about this without condemning it, I would fire you. And that's the problem. You can't retool the values of an entire company when they were hired because they believed in these values. I actually think you'd be better off doing the Elon Musk treatment and then actually calling it a reboot. We're rebooting our entire company. We've got 10 staff. They're probably the only ones that have got any talent at this point. This is why giving showrunners greater creative control isn't going to fix anything. When a show is good because the messaging aligns with the audience, and your showrunners want to convince the audience that they're incorrect and evil, giving them more free reign to tell the audience how evil they are isn't going to fix anything. They're still going to want to make shows like Captain America New World Order. You know, the Captain America without Captain America in it. And Blade, where it said one version of the previous scripts morphed into a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. Can you imagine the life lessons you'd get from someone living in California? Oh yeah, mate, don't bother about the bathroom, just do it on the street. And I leave my car unlocked, so nobody needs to smash the windows to steal everything. Yes, the world has a lot to learn from Californians.
But I was making a number of kind of crass generalisations about Americans, and I did it for comic effect.
Blade was relegated to the 4th lead. A bizarre idea, considering the studio had a 2-time Oscar winner Ali on board. That's what you think is this bizarre idea, because he was an Oscar winner, not because Blade wasn't the main character in a Blade movie. Now that's normal, but an Oscar winner. So I don't see how you can reboot everything, even if you realise that this is the direction we need to go in, because you're giving a load of people creative freedom who don't want to go in that direction. They want to go in this direction, as that's why you hired them in the first place. That's why they have their jobs. They're not going to want to turn the company from something about inclusion to talent, because then they'd have to get fired so that talented people could come in. They have a monetary incentive. Their career literally depends on the status quo not changing, because if the business had been about profit, success, and talent to begin with, they wouldn't even be in the industry. It's very difficult to fail upwards in that scenario.
It's the pear of anguish. It was used on women who had relations with the devil.
And how, even if the top-down wanted to assert pressure to force them to change the values within all the shows, how are you going to do that when the executives think it's a horrible thing to have your messaging and values align with the audience in the first place? Because he's saying Bob Iger might be trying to do that pivot, but they will fight them every step of the way until you start hiring people who think that regressive stereotypes are a good thing, as it's a stereotype because it was recognized often enough from reality. Maybe that's why Disney's trying to branch out a bit, actually having hired the right people, because we know we're not. That's not a bug, that's a feature. So instead, they're beginning to license out a lot more things, even talking about a licensing renaissance within the industry. After 4 years of doing a walled garden approach, licensing is steadily making a comeback. Maybe rather than keeping this all on our own streaming service where nobody wants it, we can license it out to those gullible fools over there who will pay us to take our trash. Maybe Willow will find a home after all. And so, as Disney has basically doubled the amount of shows which have that licensing power by their definition compared to other companies, this is driven by the US audience's continued interest in a host of locally produced, long-running sitcoms. Or as The Hill put it the other day, the top stream shows are almost all old. Why? And it was because they were recognizable. They had values that the audience did. They had people who acted like real humans, rather than insufferable cows that need to smile more.
How about a smile from me, huh?
A smile?
Yeah.
Because they realized that different characters had to act differently in order for it to be believable.
I'm offering to help you. Least you could do is give me a smile.
That just because 2 characters in Ahsoka are kind of deadpan all the time doesn't mean that they're treated the same. One is imposing, and the other one didn't have any presence. So in a time where the companies are realizing that their current movies aren't successful, well, things like Suits just seem to be successful forever. Something to bear in mind is, would you even make Suits today? Would Suits have fulfilled your checkboxes? Because the 2 main characters in it are blokes, and in today's day and age, that's not considered a success. It's considered an industry failure, even though it makes successful shows, because it seemed to be backpedaling on progress. But if the only thing you're progressing to is bankruptcy, maybe all of that regressive stuff should be looked at again. Things seem to be going well back then. Maybe the ideas and values of a previous time were better. And you can sit there and say that women shouldn't have to pay because studios dropped the ball on girl bosses. But you're in an entertainment industry, the luxury product industry. Somebody's gonna have to pay. And if the vast majority of the audience doesn't want what you're pushing on them, well, the audience isn't gonna pay. The studios can't keep paying forever. So if you can't change, if you can't become what the audience wants, and there really is no place for you in the industry, well, as long as the businesses want to make a profit anyway. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.